During my career as a Linux administrator, it's just an awesome thing when I find out about an awesome utility or tool that allows me to get my job done easier and more efficiently. So I was really pleased when I started reading about Packer by Hashicorp, which allows you to basically create cloud images in an automated manner, which is awesome because, configuring the operating system, tuning it, and getting it set up and creating custom images and things like that can be a very time-consuming thing for anyone that does DevOps or Linux administration. So in this video, what I'm going to do is give you guys a quick example of Packer. I'm going to use Linode as an example for the platform, but Packer is able to use many different platforms, not just Linode. But it's an easy example, and I thought that I would show you guys. And what I'm going to do is use Packer to build my very own Linux cloud server. So let's go ahead and dive right in. So here I am logged into my Linode dashboard. We don't have any Linodes right here, but we're going to be creating one here very shortly. If you don't already have a Linode account, I do have a link in the description below and also shown on the screen right now. That will give you $20 in credit towards your Linode infrastructure because they are a valued sponsor of my channel. What we're going to need to do first is create an API key because we need to have a way for Packer to associate with our Linode account in order to log in and create the image that we need to create. Creating an API key is very easy. You simply go here to your profile. You'll have an option here, API tokens. As you can see, I don't have any right now, but I'm going to basically add a personal access token, which is this first category right here. I'm going to click the button here on the right to add one, and we need to give it a label. So I'm going to call mine Packer. Now here we can optionally choose to have the API token expire. If you click on it, you have these options right here. You can basically have it expire in 3 months, 1 month, or never. The option that you choose here just depends on your personal preference and also maybe your company security policy if there is one. I'm going to choose never in my case. And then here on the bottom, we can choose what permissions we will give our API token. We don't want to give any API token everything. We only want to give it access to the things that it's actually going to need. In my case, I'm going to give it full access to images, also the Linodes I have on my account, and that should do the job, so I'll submit. And right here we have our personal access token. Now it's very important that you don't show this to anybody, especially not on a YouTube video where there's going to be thousands of people watching this, because anybody with a personal access token can use it to do all the things that you gave it permission to do. So if this key was to fall into the wrong hands, virtually everybody would be able to create a Linode on my account. So in my case, I'm just going to delete this anyway before I edit this video, so this won't even exist by the time you're seeing it, so I'm able to show you, and I thought it'd be cooler to show you guys an example of what this looks like. But it's very important that you don't make this publicly available. And a very good example of what not to do, and probably the best example of what not to do, is don't include your access token in your GitHub repository, especially if it is public, or anywhere where you're storing your configuration. This should stay secret. Anyway, I'm going to go ahead and copy it and click OK. This will not be shown again, so you're going to want to make note of this, or you'll have to recreate it. Now the next step for us is to go ahead and download Packer because we have our key right here. But in order for us to actually use it, we need to have something to use it with, and we haven't downloaded Packer yet, so let's go ahead and get that finished. So here on my browser, I am at the official Packer site, which is packer.io, and I'm on the download section here. So again, this is the URL. I'll have a link in the description below that you can click on. And regardless of your platform, you are able to install Packer. So if you have a MacBook, for example, or you're running FreeBSD, Linux, or even Windows, there's a version here for you. Now, given that this is a Linux channel, and I pretty much only have access to Linux machines anyway, I'm going to show you how to do this on Linux, but it should be pretty easy to do on any other platform. You simply download it for that platform. Now in my case, I'm going to download the 64-bit version, which is probably what 90% of you or more will want to use, because 64-bit is the way to go nowadays, and most Linux installations are 64-bit. So if you're at all unsure, go with this version. But if you do know for sure you're on 32-bit, go with that version. In case you're curious, I'm going to show you real quick how to tell if you are on 32-bit or 64-bit if you didn't already know. So I'm just going to open a terminal, and then you type uname-m, and you can see here I am on 64-bit. I'm using a 64-bit version of Ubuntu. This is Ubuntu 19.10, and there actually isn't a 32-bit version, so I already knew that this was 64-bit. But regardless of your Linux distribution, you should be able to run this command right here, which will tell you if you are on 32-bit or 64-bit, in which case you would not get the 64 output right here. I'm going to go ahead and click on the download button right here for the 64-bit version. Go ahead and save it. Back here on the terminal, I'm in my downloads directory, which is the default place where browsers on most Linux distros download their files. And if I list the storage, it should be there, and it is. There's Packer. We did download that, so I'll clear the screen. We need to unzip it. Now obviously you're going to need unzip installed for this to work. You can just do which unzip to see if it's installed. In my case it is. In most distributions that are Debian or Ubuntu based, if you didn't get any output here, you can simply do sudo apt install unzip, just like that. Put in your password. And in my case, it's going to tell me that it's already installed. But if you're using a different distribution, you do need that unzip command. Refer to your documentation for that distro on how to do that if you're not running Debian or anything based on Debian or Ubuntu. With that out of the way, again, we have this file right here. We need to unzip that, which is pretty easy. We just type in unzip and then the file name itself, which will probably vary by the time you get to watching this video, depending on how long it takes me to edit it, but I'll press enter. And if we list the storage again, we have two files. We have Packer on the left and the original zip file on the right. We don't need the zip file anymore, so we can go ahead and get rid of that, just to be tidy. And we have this Packer file right here. So this is not an installer. Most of the Hashicorp utilities don't have installers. Actually, I don't think any of them do. So basically, you can put this Packer executable anywhere you'd like and run it from there. If you are in the current working directory that the Packer binary is downloaded to and unzipped to, you can simply do dot and then / and then Packer. And you can see that it's working. I mean, we didn't give it anything to do, any work to do, but it did recognize it, and it's giving me some options here that I can use to as a reference to get started. But you can keep Packer here in downloads. That's really not a typical place to keep it. Or you can move it to somewhere that's system-wide that you'd be able to get access to it a lot easier. Now, it's very common to create a bin directory in your home directory that involves editing the path. I'm not going to get into that right now. So another perfectly valid place is, actually I'll just show you. So sudo mv for move, and we're going to move Packer to user local bin and press enter. Now we could type which Packer, and we can see that it's recognizing the fact that Packer is in user local bin. This is system wide. Everybody will be able to access Packer from this directory. If I list the storage of user local bin, you can see the Packer binary as well as the permissions, but the problem is it's owned by my user. We definitely do not want that. So what I'm going to do is sudo chown, then root user local bin Packer. And if we check the permissions now, we'll see that it's owned by root. Why does that matter? Well, the reason why is because if it's owned by our user account and some kind of malware or some kind of horrible software gets on our system, it's going to have access to change that file, and we definitely don't want anything to change unless we want it to. We can use the sudo command to update Packer. We simply re-download it and move it over top of it. So now that it's owned by root, we need root privileges to modify it, which means malicious software would not have root permissions and would not be able to change it. It's just a security thing. I recommend putting it in userlocalbin with root permissions. It's just better. So I'm going to go back to my home directory here. And again, we have the Packer command now. We don't need a dot or / anymore because it's in a recognized place and we are able to use it. So how do we actually use it for the purposes of our mission here, which is to create a Linode VM, and that's what I'm going to show you right now. Now, first of all, we need to create a directory to hold our work. Now, how you manage your directories and your naming convention and things is completely up to you. But what I'm going to do, just for the sake of simplicity, is I'm going to make a directory. I'm going to call it Packer_WD for working directory. I'm going to cd into there. Of course, it's empty because we just created that folder. And in the real world, you would basically have a folder for every project or thing that you're working on. So you might have multiple Packer directories with the configuration files inside. In this video, we're only going to have this one, but you could have a folder for web server and then have the configuration in there. You could have another directory for file server, have some configuration in there, and you could even have them all under a master directory that tracks all of them. And most people will probably put that into version control like Git. That's beyond the scope of this video, but for now we're just going to work in this one directory. Now we need to create a few JSON files. That is the format that Packer uses for its templates. And it doesn't matter what you call it, but what I'm going to do is open up an editor. I'll just use Nano to keep it simple. And I'm going to call mine Linode example.json. This is an empty file because we're creating a fresh one. And I'm going to go ahead and paste in my sample here. And then I'll go ahead and walk you through it. Okay, so here we have my example file. And in the description below will be a link to the wiki page for this video where you can go to actually download this file. So don't worry about typing everything out manually. Actually, Packer is very, very touchy when it comes to formatting. So even so much as one comma being out of place or any character being out of place is going to be enough to basically make it fail. So just to keep it simple, go ahead and download that example that you'll find there, and then I'll talk you through it right now. Now here on the first line, we have an opening curly brace or bracket, which is just the beginning of our file. No surprise there. And then we have this section right here called variables. And what I did was I created a variable called Linode API token, as you can see here with underscores in the name. And when you set up a variable, you can make it equal to something by putting something in the quotes. But notice here that I don't have anything in the quotes. Now when we run this script, it's going to fail because it really does need that Linode API token to be declared. Now it doesn't matter what you call this, but I just figured that was a good name. But we do need a token. We'll fix that later. And then here we have the end of the variable section. So going down to the next section, we actually have a declaration for our builders. And actually the builder type that we're going to use is Linode. So essentially this builders section starts with a normal bracket, then a curly brace. And then we go ahead and we put in the various fields. Some of these required, some of these not. And of course we do need a type, Linode in our example, which is what I have here. And then this is required right here. This is not something you can just name whatever you want. These are actual fields that are expected. And it's called Linode _token. You have to have that again. And you can see right here, I don't actually have our API token. Instead, I have something in additional brackets. So what this is actually a variable. So we have user, and then we have the name of the variable, which we actually declared up here. But when we declared it as empty. More on that later. But essentially right here, instead of actually putting the API key here, I'm actually just going to reference that variable, because if we upload this file to GitHub, we don't want to have this token in the clear. We want to withhold that. So we're just going to reference that here. And then at the end of each of these lines, of course, we have this comma right here. And then image, this is required. This is the next line here, image. We need to tell it what image we want. I am using Debian 10, so we have linode/Debian 10 because this is a Linode image, and the image we want is Debian 10. Now, just so you know, you do have a limit of 2048 megabytes. So if the image is actually more than that, then you are not able to use it. So for example, Ubuntu 18.04, that one is bigger than the limit. So if you were to use Ubuntu 18.04 for the image right here, it will fail, which may not always be the case. If they update that or they fix that or something like that, that might not be the case. But I'm using Debian 10 because it's smaller. And then moving on, we have a region right here. And I'm going to give you guys a link in the description below for their API. You can get the various values for things, but this is basically where we want our image to be located geographically. And the same with instance type. We're setting up a Nanode instance right here. There's different instance types of different prices and configurations. For example, this is just a small one. Now, SSH_username is root. So why do we need SSH? Well, the fact is, when Packer is configuring our image and creating it for us, it needs to SSH into that instance while it's running and configure it. You'll see the process later when we actually start using this script. Now, instance label, since it is going to create an instance, in order for it to actually create the image we want to create, this is going to give it a name. And timestamp is a pretty cool variable because you don't have to declare this because it already knows what it means. So if you want a timestamp on when it's created, it's just good to have. It's not required, but basically the label is going to be my server hyphen and then the timestamp. Now the image label is a little bit more important because the whole goal here is to create custom images that we can use to deploy more servers with. And it's a good idea to have a descriptive label for that. Now obviously mine isn't very descriptive, it's just going to be my image and then a timestamp, which is okay, but maybe yours would be something like beta web server or accounting server, whatever it might happen to be for. You might have a more descriptive name right here. Scroll down a bit here. And then finally we have the image description, my first Packer image. That's just what I decided to put there. You can put whatever you'd like. Now here we are marking the end of the builders section that started right here. And we should actually be good to go with just this. So what I'm going to do is save it and then exit out. Back here at the shell, we are not quite ready to go yet because we still haven't declared our API key. We referenced it, but we didn't put anywhere for it to know what it's actually going to be equal to. So what we want to do now is create another JSON file. We're going to do nano, and let's just call it variables.json, easy enough, and press enter. And here we are with another empty file. And then I'm going to paste in the contents here, and then I'm going to explain what we're actually doing. And here we go. Now in this case, we have the variable that I created earlier that has to match. That's a custom name. I just called it Linode API token. It's in quotes. There's a colon here and a space, and then it's going to have the entire API key right here. Now we can go here to this line. It's just wrapped. Actually, it's not wrapped. It's just going off to the side. We can see simply it's just in quotes here. Now if you have other variables, you're going to want to put like, a comma there. The last one doesn't need a comma. There's only one, so there is no comma. So basically the only purpose of this file right now is to include that token. Now we could include other variables as well. Like for example, where we have the image name or any of the other fields, we can make those variables and we can put them in this file. So I'm going to go ahead and do Control-O and enter to save, and then Control-X to exit out. We now have two files. We have Linode example.json and variables.json. And we actually should be ready to go. Let's go ahead and see if we can get our custom image built. So to go ahead and start the process of building our image, there's a very specific command which I'm going to paste in right now. And there it is. So it wrapped a little bit here, but basically what we're doing is we're calling the Packer binary. That's of course the one that we saved in our userlocalbin directory. We want to build something, and we have our API key in its own file variables.json, so the -var-file option equals right here allows us to basically tell it where to get that from. And of course, if your variables file is located somewhere else, you're going to reference it from that location. And then finally, you are giving it the script or template that you would like it to run for you. So I'm going to go ahead and press enter, and let's see if this works. So far so good. I'm going to go ahead and let this run. So let's take a quick look at what exactly happened here. So again, we executed the command packer build, we gave it a variables file, and then we gave it a template file to use that we just created here. And once it ran, it basically is telling me that it's running the builder. It's creating a temporary SSH key because it needs to log into the instance to configure it. So it's creating it. It's connecting to it and then has to wait for a while before SSH becomes available. Once it's connected, it then shuts it down, creates the image, and then it just tells us that it's finished. Now, this image isn't really that valuable because, I mean, you could just go in the dashboard yourself and just using your mouse, say you want a Debian 10 instance and get it built. And we didn't really do anything custom here that would differentiate ours from, you know, the standard Debian 10. So what can we do to basically add a little spice to this? Now, one thing we can do is actually run a script to basically have it do some things for us. And I'm going to show you that process right now. Now, first of all, we need to create a script. So what I'm going to do is just do nano script.sh. And again, we have an empty file. So I'll go ahead and paste in the contents here. And here I have a very, very simple script. So the idea is basically that we want some customizations made to our image. You know, whatever those customizations might be, we're just going to put those customizations in a script. And then when it's building the image, it's going to run everything here. Now, in this case, the sudo apt update is required because it's not going to have an up-to-date package index. So any package installation will fail if you don't have this. And then we'll, of course, make the entire script fail. Then on this line right here, we are installing Apache 2, which is the name of the Apache package in Debian and Ubuntu. And we're just doing a sudo apt install -y Apache 2. If we don't have the -y option, then it will fail because it's going to ask, are you sure, or something like that. And the script isn't able to answer a question, so it's just going to fail. The -y assumes yes. So I'm going to go ahead and save the file, Control O, enter, and Control X. And now we have that file, script.sh, along with the others. So I'm going to create another template and show that to you that's going to utilize that script that we just created. So I'm going to do nano linode example2.json, another blank file. I'll paste in the contents. And here we have the template. So basically it's the same as the previous one. I've added a new section here. If you scroll down, you'll see I have the provisioners section that I just added. So again, we were using only the builders section before, which is where we were using to declare that we want to create an instance on the Linode platform and then all the fields associated with that. That's the builder section, which is this here. And it ends with a bracket. We're creating a new section, and this one's really simple. All we're doing is in this provisioners section, we are just creating a provisioner of type, shell, and we want it to execute script.sh. So whatever you call your script, you want to make sure you have the right name here, because if it goes looking for this script, it's going to assume it's in the current working directory, and if it can't find it, then it's going to go and fail, and we definitely don't want that. So I'm going to go ahead and save this file, and then we'll go ahead and run it. And here's the command to run our new template. I'll press enter. Let's see if this works. So far so good. I'm going to go ahead and let this run. So as you can see here, we were able to build a custom image. It did work, and if I scroll up a little bit, you can see all the things that it did for us. So let me go up here a little bit further. So for the most part, a lot of this is the same as before, but we do have this right here that tells us it is using our script, script.sh, to provision. We're going to get some warnings. This is basically some warnings that show up from within Debian itself. We're going to ignore that because it doesn't actually apply to us. But what it's going to do is show us the output from the script. So right now it's running apt update, updating the package index, and it's also showing we have 16 packages that can be upgraded. So that could be another thing that you could add to your script, is to automate that if you'd like some homework. But anyway, now it's going to go ahead and run the install of Apache 2, which is basically what it's doing. We see right here, it's telling us those packages will be installed. It didn't ask us for confirmation because we did -y, which we have to do anyway. Just went ahead and proceeded to install. So now it's downloading everything. And we're not really concerned with these types of things right here because we don't have a TTY long story. It still works fine. Let's keep scrolling. And then here we see, of course, the end of the apt output where it's installing those packages for us. Now that it installed those packages, it's going to shut down the Linode instance. Then it's going to create the image. And now it's telling us that the image has been created. Is it telling us the truth? Let's go ahead and take a look. So here on my Linode dashboard, we now have 2 different images right here. You can see the new one here at the bottom. So now we have that, and then I can go ahead and click on the 3 dots right here. And I can deploy it to a new Linode. Let me go ahead and click on that. And now we are going through the process of creating a Linode, which is actually pretty much mostly the same as before, but we're using a custom image. We're going to choose that image right here. Region, I'm just going to go ahead and use the first one right here. That should be fine. I'm going to go ahead and create a nanode here on the nanode tab because it's the cheapest way to go. And for the label, I'm going to just put LLTV-test so we know it's the right one. Root password, go ahead and put in that. And of course, I hope yours is stronger than mine, but I'm going to go ahead and delete this anyway, so it really doesn't matter. And then we can go ahead and create it. And here we see the progress up at the top, so I'm basically just waiting for that to finish. And if this worked properly, when I visit the IP address, which you see right here, I'm going to go ahead and copy that in a new browser tab. I should have the Apache default page since we did actually tell it to install Apache for us. So I think enough time has passed. Let's see. Open a new tab here. Paste in that IP address. Moment of truth. Let's see what happens. We have the Apache 2 default page. Apache 2 does not come default on Linode instances. We were able to basically automate that installation. Now, Apache 2 is not a very exciting example, to be fair, because it only takes 30 seconds to just run sudo apt install Apache 2 whenever you want to install that. But it was just an example of basically a proof of concept of what you can do here, because you could put whatever you'd like in the script. For example, let's just say there's some files that you want to have present on the system that is something your company wants to be the case, maybe some company specific customizations or any kind of thing that you often find yourself manually doing would be a good candidate for this particular script. But the whole idea is you can use Packer to create your own custom cloud image, and Linode is just one example. You can use it against AWS, for example, and you could customize that. There's just all kinds of cool things that you can do with Packer, and as you were able to see, it's really easy to get started. You just give it a script, you give it an API key, and you're good to go. So hopefully that was fun for you guys, and go ahead and try to extend it. Maybe try to use it with a different platform, or maybe put some different things in the automation script if you'd like, and just play around with it and have some fun, because that's how you learn. So again, I hope that was helpful. Let me know in the comments below what you guys think and what you guys were able to build, and I will see you in the next video. Thanks for checking out my video. I really appreciate it. If you found it useful, click that like button, and if you haven't already done so, make sure you subscribe so you'll see the latest content as soon as it becomes available. If you want to help me out, there's links down below for my Patreon page, as well as links for purchasing my Linux books, and also my affiliate store, which has a listing of Linux compatible hardware that I've actually tested personally. Thanks again for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.